Well, you have to.
Because Brian muted himself.
Okay, everybody yell.
No. That was your,
That one's coming through the camera. And this says it's on. Over here, it's.
well, there it goes.
Now it's on.
I still can't hear it over the speaker though.
Are we supposed to hear our own voices
Over the
speaking back through the
speaker.
speaker?
Yeah.
That's a little weird.
I-
Like, does it?
It's really low though. It's very
Okay.
mellow.
Yeah, but that's a good point. That does seem like a
There's
feedback
three options for
source.
speakers. It's supposed to be the echo canceling speakerphone, or there's speakers or cat splitter.
Well, my sound is turned down. I am going to go on Zoom and pull up the,
I want to try and turn on the. Oh, it is on. We just can't hear it over the speaker.
Right. So there's a bunch of different speakers. I don't know if, is this one we normally use? Or do we not know? Because we could try and switch it to another one.
That's the one we want.
Oh, okay, great.
so where's our county
So it should be
public
good.
hookup, CCC?
Yes. So somebody, are you saying if somebody like wants to do a public comment, we'll be able to hear it?
What's
Yeah,
the password?
so
Clear Creek with like a @ symbol.
Do you want me to go in there and
clear,
test it?
And then
Like get on
the
Zoom and
E's in
test it?
Creek
Okay.
are 3s or something like that, right?
All right.
The password,
Let me
yeah.
join it really quick and then I'll go over there.
What we need is we need
So it's-
Rick to test this for us. Somebody who's not in this room and is logged into Zoom.
Right, that's, I'm gonna go in my office and do it.
Okay.
I can
Wait,
hear
there he
you
is.
guys
There he
loud
is.
and clear.
Oh,
oh, I just
need to turn
Rick, do you hear us? Will you nod your head?
Yeah, I can hear you guys.
oh, perfect.
This is kind of like a seance.
We're good to go.
Good job, Beth.
okay.
We could hear the password that you just told Don.
Okay,
Got to be careful.
what's the password for the Wi-Fi at your house?
Yeah. I could tell you, but then I'd have to chase you down.
It'd be too late. It wouldn't matter at that point. You have to chase everybody down.
That's true.
The good news is it didn't work anyway. I don't think I remembered it right.
Peter?
No.
So we're in good shape then, Rick. You can hear us. We can hear you when you speak. We don't hear voices coming back through our
Right.
speakers, our own voices.
And Rick can hear us, right?
Rick, can you hear Amy when she talks? Oh,
You're good, I'm not.
bad timing.
So can somebody, what's the password for CCC?
Somebody type it to it.
You're all right.
No, what I'm saying is George said it is clear at Creek and the E's in Creek.
We were
Threes.
thinking maybe we don't want it to be published in the meeting.
Best to write that down.
Yeah, that's, I get it. Because it's the visitor password, right?
Is it?
No, the visitor password is different.
Is this it right here?
Isn't this it?
I thought that's the one I was on. That's what I asked for, which is why I didn't understand why it would need to be
I
secret.
think so.
A visitor.
And which-
This one here.
Okay, no,
No capitals, I don't think.
okay, and no @ sign between.
That's an @ sign right there. CL3 @
Oh. Oh, okay.
Camera isn't.
Now it's making
Probably follow
sense.
you. I don't like it.
It does follow you.
Does it?
Yeah.
Damn.
Do you like my picture this morning?
That should be
Yes.
it right there.
You know, I missed a prime opportunity for my photo. There was one standing on the shore by that little pond by me.
Yeah.
And I didn't have my phone on me.
Oh,
And I mean, it was so close. And I was chatting with some people. They were from out of state and I almost asked them, could I take a picture with your phone and text it to myself?
yeah.
Cause
Yep.
it was,
He was beautiful.
it would have been
It's
spectacular.
still
It was so
asking me
pretty.
for the password.
Was he by the lagoon? Is that-
No, down by where the trail starts in front of the log house,
Oh, wow.
right there. And I mean, we were with like 3
Let's
dogs
see if it works this time.
and he didn't even care.
Yeah,
He was like, I'm eating willows.
that's fantastic. They're so neat to see.
Yes.
No
I
cats.
saw one with a mom and
I don't think so.
too.
And are we in?
Watch out for them.
May-
33K.
You didn't get too close.
Let
My
me,
picture
let's
is like-
try this. This is the one I'm looking for. CCC.
It's all way zoomed in.
Doesn't one of them not need a
Or something.
password?
What?
His WPN should default, but if he hasn't logged in a while, it might not default.
Am I looking for CCC?
WPN.
Oh,
All right.
okay, that's why I'm on the wrong one.
See if that one defaults.
Nanette, right around the same time I got you that elephant ear plant, we took a bunch of other cuttings and planted them and ours are alive. Are yours alive?
Yeah,
Yeah?
yep, mine lived.
Cool.
It's doing great up there. I left it in the office because I was afraid to bring it home.
Yeah,
Just not being sure if it would get enough light, but it's doing great.
cool.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Okay,
It's,
you can see the
Ours just
password.
started sprouting leaves.
I keep
was
trying
about to
it.
give
I
up.
tried
I gotta get
CCCW.
my glasses.
Now I have. We need to get rid of some more.
Excellent. That's what you do.
Yeah, exactly.
Propagate and
And
share.
I'm looking, and it's looking for CCC
Try to
again.
capitalize the Cs.
Yeah, I will, except it's still telling me I'm looking for
Oh.
CCC instead of CCC WPN. And I'm telling it not to do that, cancel. You go back.
You guys hear me?
Hey, Rick, I can hear you. I think the
Yes, we
problem
can
with the
hear you,
sound.
Rick.
Okay.
We were just muted.
All right.
You hear the chatter, you gotta be in the room.
Yeah,
Isn't there a podium?
Yeah, there's one over there.
Way over there.
We used to have staff sit there when they presented.
Oh, okay.
So, but you're right, during public comment, we did have that little that podium right in the front. So people
Okay.
could come speak.
Okay. Great. It does not, it's not echoing. I just went on Zoom and wanted to check.
Good. Phew.
Are we muted?
No,
Okay.
okay, we're back
Okay.
on. All right,
We ready to get this show on the road?
yes.
Perfect. First off, I'm sorry I'm not there. I completely forgot about it. I had like a terrible sleep on Sunday night, and this morning I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna sleep until the last possible second. And I did, so that's good news. But here I am in Evergreen. Our first item, so today's a regularly scheduled meeting of the Clear Creek County Board of County Commissioners. It's 8:30-ish. And the first item is the administrative approval of renewal of retail marijuana store license for DG Air Colorado. Nanette.
That's correct. The application is complete. No
Okay.
major concerns with the application at all. Everything is fine. Administrative approval, as long as.
All right. Consider it approved.
Thank you.
On to public comment. I know I've seen at least one person in the chat who came here to make a public comment today. So if that is you, let us know what's on your mind. And I think if you're not in the panelist group, you need to raise your hand and Beth will move you over.
I am crossing over Lori Beckel.
Okay.
There she is. Okay.
Hey, Lori, we can see you.
Great. Thank you so much, Commissioner Wood. Good morning, commissioners. I am here as acting as the president of our new nonprofit in Clear Creek County, expanding early care and learning. And I am just here to ask for your support to go ahead and get scheduled the sub-area plan that was discussed the last time I was before you for the DLD area. My recollection of that meeting in November, when another board member, Carla Cole, and I presented to you the findings with the licensing specialist from Triad when we looked at the previous LDS church. We wanted you to be aware that that building was suitable for a childcare center. And my recollection of the decision you made at that meeting was to not act until the completion of the sub-area plan that involved those communities surrounding that building. So I am just here to again support the moving forward of that sub-area plan so that whatever the wisest use is of that property and building you would be able to move ahead and make some of those decisions. Our situation related to being a childcare desert has not improved. I do believe we've been able to keep the Bearly Hall Child Care Center on top of Floyd Hill, which is really good. Our board met with those owners and did everything we could to support that facility being kept as our only child care center in Clear Creek County. So that's my appeal to you. And I'm here if there are any questions, but appreciate the opportunity to make public comment about this today.
Thanks, Lori. George, Randy, do you have any comments?
No, I think this is just public comment, as Peter advised us a little bit ago, rather than a give and take in a dialogue. Am I correct?
Yep, I think we're free to make comments whenever we want, but it's not a dialogue. That's correct. Okay, thank you, Lori. Is there anyone else who is interested in making a public comment? All right, hearing none, we'll close public comment. Move on to the commissioner updates. Randy, we'll start with you.
I can't really think of anything right off the bat. I think I have nothing this week.
Yeah.
I mean, there are things going on to report, but I wasn't prepared to make a report this morning, so sorry about that.
No, that's fine. Yeah, we just talked about this a week ago. Anything from you, George?
Yeah, I got a couple of things here, a few things. First off, a reminder about Thursday's opioid settlement conference. I think a good number of people on our staff and from our elected offices are going to be there. It's going to be a good first stab at us having some time to map out what's happening with opioids in Clear Creek County. I want to thank Megan Heiler, our new PIO, because I had put together a Word document just with what I was able to find related to opioids in Clear Creek. And turn that into a document we could actually be proud to print in a very short turnaround. So thank you, Megan.
No problem.
So just a reminder for everyone that that's coming up. Also related to the opioid abatement conversation, there's a statewide conference, August 15th and 16th. The 16th is a Tuesday that our BOCC meets. If we could find another date for that meeting, I would really love to attend this conference for the first year. We've got a reasonable amount of money to spend on opioids and we want to get the policy right. And as Clear Creek's a rep to that board or one of them, I just feel like I need some more policy done. I don't know that we need to have that conversation right now because it's June, but it's the meeting of August 16th that I would love for us to find a different date for.
And then I think the only thing I would have to say, a couple things popped into my head since my brain wasn't in that space when you asked the question, Sean. But with regard to the opioid conference, I will be there in the afternoon. We have a CCAT governing board meeting in the morning, and it's setting up for the CCAT retreat the following week. And so I'll be at as much of the opioid conference as I can. We also have a NOCO retreat coming up in the near future, which is taking quite a bit of time to prepare for. And then we also did, as of Friday, get the grant in the National Scenic Byway grant application through Cdot, which was chosen by Cdot along with two others to be the applications that they would submit this year for the state of Colorado. So that was a good thing. We talked about that in a previous meeting, but that's often done and in the works. And whether we get it or not, I think the conversations that led to, since that grant implies a rather large collaboration with a lot of different people working together, at least set the groundwork for the conversations among those people, those partners for that purpose of a lot of the changes that would go along with renaming on Evans and Mistahay. So. And we'll call that, so I went after George this time instead.
Okay.
Okay, that's fine. Anything else, George or Randy?
Yeah, I do. I've got another couple things. Sorry. I just want to reiterate our CCI's legislative proposals process is kicking off. This is just a message to staff. I'm very, very interested to hear what you think your Board of County Commissioners can do to help find legislative solutions and make your jobs better, make it easier for us to serve our constituents. Really, really want to take some of your ideas to the legislature. So if you have them, please deliver them to us. And then lastly, I just wanted to, following up on our public comment, because we have Amy Saxton in the room, I just wanted to ask, I think you gave us an update on the sub-area plan a few months ago, but a little foggy. Can you just fill us in? What are our next steps on that plan and our timeline?
So this is gonna come up during the ARPA conversation because it relates directly to that.
Okay,
So I was planning on sharing it then when we get to the ARPA conversation.
perfect. Thank you. And that's it for me.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think I have anything to add today. So why don't we just move on to the county manager update?
Thanks, Sean. On June 13th, the Idaho Springs City Council approved the creation of the Special Improvement District in their downtown. The county owns one parcel in that district, the Resource Center. They cannot assess any kind of a tax to us as a fellow local government, but they have reached out to me wanting to meet and enter into a conversation about participating financially in the funding of both their parking structure and their mobility hub via that special improvement district. I think I've seen the assessment of what the resource center would cost. I think I want to say it's somewhere around $40,000, but I'm not entirely positive there. I had my one-on-one with Sean yesterday, so I shared this with him yesterday. As chair, he's available to meet in the afternoon next week with the city of Idaho Springs. So I wanted to bring that to all three of you and let you know that request is there, that request to meet. It would be with Mayor Harmon, Andy. So I'd like to take a board member with me to have that conversation with them so we can come back and report back to the full board.
Yeah, and just to be clear, my thoughts on representing us would be as somebody who is listening and gathering notes and understanding what the ask is and nothing more.
For that meeting, you're saying, Sean, that would be the
Yeah.
role.
Yeah. I mean, what I'm saying, I don't think I don't think the intention is to try and create a position now for something that we don't even fully understand yet.
Right.
Right, that would have been, no matter who attends, that would have been my intent, certainly.
Yeah. We just need to hear what they have to say at this point.
Right.
I don't think it's written into the agenda, although we always have a placeholder for executive session, and this is a negotiation. And I'd be willing to spend a couple minutes in executive session today, just giving Sean and Brian a little bit of direction about what we might think.
If you want to do that today, I mean, that's fine with me.
Okay. Let me do that end of the meeting. George and I met again with Cass of the Lodgers Bureau.
Thank you.
We're developing a lodgers tax survey to be going out, so we'll be getting that hopefully to all three of you this week. And we'll be seeking your feedback and your turnaround so we can get that survey actually out. So be on the lookout for an email from us this week with respect to the lodgers tax survey to get your input and your thoughts on what we've developed.
I'm kind of curious to hear what kind of turnaround, knowing that we're on a timeline here. And this is a question for Randy and Sean and for myself. What kind of turnaround do we want to commit to in terms of getting feedback on that survey? 2 days?
2 days after receipt.
I think that sounds fine.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Then a little bit of good news. We did, Idaho Springs did let us know last week that we did receive word that we received the Ihop Grant from the Department of Local Affairs. So that's a good thing. The Innovative Housing Opportunities Program, I think it's called, anyway. Housing grant, so stay tuned there. So that's some good news, so. I think I'll stop there.
Anything else, Brian?
That's it.
Okay. Is there, so it's 8:50, our next agenda item is at 9:05. Is there anything else that we could productively use this little slot of time for, or do you want to just take a little break and start up again at 9:05?
What we could do is have that short, very brief executive session that George alluded to.
Yeah, I'd be up for
That's
that.
15 minutes.
You have more than
Yeah.
15 minutes in you, George, or is that gonna work?
No, I'm fine with it.
All right. Does that
Right
work for
now?
you?
Yes.
Yeah. Does that
Okay,
work
I
for you,
feel-
Peter?
Yeah, it's.
Do we have
I'd
some-
actually like a little more information about the property, because I have to make an announcement. You can't just announce an
We're going into
executive.
executive session to discuss the Resource Center, which is on Colorado Boulevard. We can get you an address,
That'd be great.
1531 Colorado Boulevard.
Let me bring it up.
which is a
No, I'm not a fan of doing this.
a parcel in the middle of their special district.
And then technically we go into this room and Peter will still send a link over to Sean so that he can jump in with us and actually to all of us so we could see Sean easily while we're in there and stuff.
Okay. So can we get a motion?
We move into executive session to discuss the following matter.
Pursuant to CRS 24640224A for the discussion with the county attorney for the purposes of discussing the purchase, acquisition, lease, transfer, or sale of any personal or other property interest related to the resource center, as well as determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiation or determining negotiating strategies or instructing negotiators pursuant to 24640224E.
Second.
A motion and a second, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. The board will now move into executive session. No written minutes will be kept. No decisions will be made. And we'll be back by 9:05.
We
Gotta say, I'm a little disappointed. We were able to put a man on the moon like, what, 50 some, 60 years ago, and we can't do 2 Zoom meetings at once. You're muted, Randy. Well, actually, maybe it's the whole county's muted.
There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah. No,
Okay, yeah, my laptop's supposed to be muted, to avoid feedback. Yeah, what I was saying was that, and then when there's something really going on, what was interesting is once COVID began and we did go on to Zoom, instead of having at the most 12 to 18 people in the room, and that would be 1 out of every 20 meetings. The rest of the time it was some staff and 2 other people, you know? We suddenly had 60 members of the community attending our meetings and we went, wow, we stumbled on to something that is way better. And that Sean, honestly, giving a lot of credit to Sean had been talking about doing this for some time before it. And at the time I wasn't a believer because I thought the in-person dialogue was the most important. I had no idea the level of accessibility this would give our public who otherwise can't attend our meetings, you know, don't have time.
okay, well, we're all assembled. We have just returned from executive session. We did not take minutes. We did not make any decisions, and we're back on a regular session. We're a little bit behind our 9:05 agenda items, the discussion and possible action regarding the process for and spending of American Rescue Plan Act funding. So Brian, to you, maybe a super quick background about the amount of money and what we've talked about and spent so far, and then take it from there.
Do. Thank you, sir. As Sean said, I think the 3 of you are aware, the county was awarded $1,884,000 in American Rescue Plan Act funding. We've received half of that allocation to date and expect to receive the remainder at some point during this current fiscal year. Per the regulations developed at the federal level, the ARPA funds can really be lumped into 2 large buckets. The first is local governments are able to estimate the total amount of revenue that we're projecting to lose over a 4-year fiscal period starting in FY 2020. And we can set those sides aside to be used for any general governmental purpose. And so that bucket is intended to be lost revenue replacement. Any funds remaining would then fall into the second bucket and only be spent on economic aid or public health programs that provide a direct benefit to individuals or communities most impacted by the pandemic. One of the last items that Alyssa Dinberg worked on for us prior to leaving for her position at the state was working with an outside accounting firm to complete that revenue analysis. And according to that calculation, it showed that we had lost over $4 million in revenue, twice as much as our ARPA allocation, which makes the ARPA money eligible to be spent on basically anything related to our governmental operations. So your packet includes a pretty lengthy list of projects. We first shared that with you at the first retreat day that we held together in this room. You asked us to kind of go back and refine it a little bit. You ask us to identify as many grant opportunities that are out there as possible. And FYI, Sean, I emailed you a new copy of this at the start of this meeting. There's one minor change that I made to the actual spreadsheet since it went into the packet. Question? So the funds have to be encumbered by December 31st of 2024. They have to be fully spent by December 31st of 2026. Friendly reminder, the board did approve use of ARPA funds for 3 immediate needs that we had brought to the board. And this is where one of the changes happened. First is the DOLA Ihop grant that I mentioned to you earlier today that we received.
These items are not on this list right now, correct?
Yeah, they're actually down here in the bottom.
Right.
So 50,000 up to $50,000 match for the Ihop grant. We're not sure what that dollar value is going to be yet. You approved up to $80,000 for the purchase of a bus. Did we lose Sean?
No, he's there.
Okay. You approved $80,000 for the purchase of a bus. This is the one change on the spreadsheet. We did identify some money in our transit budget So we're only using 43,000 of the ARPA towards that bus itself. And then $55,000 for a grant administrator. I feel pretty strongly that we have to be spending, these ARPA funds are one-time monies, right? So once they're spent, they're gone. There's no replenishing of the ARPA funds. Right, so our suggestion to you is that these funds really need to be spent on one-time items. Now, that said, obviously a grant administrator has an ongoing cost, but they're gonna be responsible for finding all the grants that are associated, hopefully associated with using some of these monies moving forward, as well as funding that position itself. So that does kind of fly in the face of using it one-time monies for one-time expenses, but I wanted to comment on that. And I think we all wish that this $1.8 million could stretch farther. I think it's a lot of money to us individually, but to the county and its operations and the needs that we have, we could eat up $1.8 million in a hurry, quickly, very quickly. So I ended my memo with a set of questions for you. Is there anything missing from that list, from that project list that you expected to be on there? Is there other data, other information that you need in order to make the best informed decision possible? Are there any things on that list that the board wants to fund immediately, et cetera? So there's a list of questions there at the end of the memo, and I think I'll stop there and turn it back over to Sean and the board, and we can go from there.
Yeah, I mean, I personally feel like I don't have any, I'm less far along in my thought process than George or Randy. I don't really have nothing off that list just jumps off to say something that I want to fund this today, 9:20 a.m. on June 21st. And I kind of, the way my mind kind of works is I would almost rather go through all of it rather than piecemeal it and, wake up 30 days from now and realize it's not 1.9 million, but it's 600,000 that's left, and we have a bigger item that we should have funded that we didn't. But that's just how I look at it. But on the other end, 2024 is probably going to be here before we know it, but it's still a good bit of time to make a calculated and sober decision about this important opportunity that we have.
I think that my initial comment, the only one, is that I think it's worth taking, since we have a little time and we blocked out for it today, to look at, see if there's any of these that really are to us, one that we really feel needs to move forward at this time. And I'm not saying I even know what that is. With regard to anything missing, the only thing I note missing off of here that is a community resiliency and public health item, but I think with good cause it's left off at this time, is Empire Water. That's more important than a fiber loop in Idaho Springs, as an example, or something like that. And I'm not discounting the fiber loop in Idaho Springs by any means, and I'm not saying it shouldn't happen even under this request. But I know that we do have the federal grant. We already have the support of our Congress people as for that project is one of their selected items, and I think it has a pretty strong likelihood. So it's not something that I'd want to use these funds, even though I'm from Empire. It's not something I'd want to move these funds into at this time, because we have the chance of seeing the same thing happen for us from the federal government that they did for us on the clinic last year. So I'm good with the list overall. And then the only question is what we do with the list today, as Sean alluded to, and I would defer to George to kick off any of those thoughts.
Yeah, I guess my opening comment is that I want to be thoughtful about this too. Mm-hmm. I know I've spent a lot of time thinking about this. Spent a lot of time thinking about some of the projects that are on this list. Some of the stuff that's on this list, in my mind, amounts to an emergency response to a crisis we're experiencing. I'll use the behavioral health investments as an example, where we have a behavioral health crisis, and the sooner we make investments in addressing that, the better off everyone is. So there's some items on this list that I would advocate for us to go ahead and authorize today so that staff can get to work on them. But I do have, before we jump in any further with my opinions, I just have some questions. Or with my opinions, with our opinions.
They're yours.
First off, we funded the grants administrator at 1 FTE. It makes sense to me that we might want to throw like a second and or third year onto this list for that FTE if we want to have that position funded more than the remaining, I don't know what's remaining, less than a year. So that's a thought that I have. I had a question about, I just want to point something out about the broadband conduit install and road projects. We're listing 300,000 as the cost estimate. And maybe this is true for all of these. I'm having a little bit of, or for a lot of these, where we have a grant that's associated with it. If we choose to authorize this, are we authorizing $300,000 in ARPA money? Or are we authorizing 300 minus this grant that's listed as being possible here?
I guess I'd ask you to authorize up to the $300,000 number so that we could use that grant then to figure out what the ultimate number would be.
So then we would want, maybe there could be a process where if there is stuff that's associated with a grant, we go ahead and authorize it, get the grant written, and then really we won't know the final number until we hear back on the grant, right?
Correct.
So that could be another reason for us to want to authorize some stuff today so that the grant processes can get started.
So to answer your question from earlier, the DOD sub-area plan, Amy did apply for a grant via Henderson. We did get word that we made it through their first round, which is a letter of intent, and now we need to actually apply. So we did make it through the first round of the Henderson process of getting a grant to apply towards that sub-area plan at DOD.
And so that's where we're seeing a cost estimate of $21,250 because we're already kind of accounting for
A match.
That would be the match there. Okay.
That's how I read it.
Okay, thank you.
But they're not all like that, it appears.
And then I guess I have a question for Sean. Sean, you referenced there may be a bigger item coming and wanting to keep powder dry for a bigger item that may be coming. I'm curious, is there anything specifically in your mind or like categories of things you'd be interested in hearing more about?
Not really. It was kind of a recognition that the time for us to consider this and make the wisest decision is until the end of 2024, right? And yeah, one other comment I would just make is I think there's like two things that don't jump off the page at this spreadsheet, or the spreadsheet. One of them is like the timeliness. Is there an opportunity that's going to go away or related to someone's going to pave a road and we're not going to have a chance to trench in some fiber anymore? And the other one is the leverage. Like, and it's sort of implied, but it would be easier if we had those things explicit in my mind, because I like sorting the spreadsheet, and I can kind of sort it to say, hey, which is the view that I can look at this where our dollars will go the farthest and work the hardest, where we can take one ARPA dollar and turn it into $4 for the county or $10 versus what's going to be one-on-one spending. And I guess my slight biases are toward smaller grants to be able to accomplish more things. And that's a different question, I guess, George.
I didn't get the end of that.
Sean, I didn't catch the last sentence or so.
Yeah, you cut out there for a sec.
Yeah, just on my internet got unstable for a second. Yeah, I was just saying, I guess I have a little bit of a bias towards, maybe you would call it efficiency, in terms of looking more closely at opportunities to leverage the dollars harder. So if there's outside money, such as the Henderson money that we mentioned, where $20,000 can turn into $80,000, that just has a little bit more of a natural appeal to me. And then the other one is just smaller dollars. So I look at the 1.8 million for the corner, and that feels like it doesn't feel good to me to basically spend all the money on one thing and give zero to everything else.
I'm hearing you ask for additional information on some of these also.
What I was saying is, and maybe it doesn't. Yeah, the leverage is the part that I would love to have on there that I could sort by. So it would essentially be a number that would say like 4 times or 2 times or 1 times, like what type of grants would be available. Like it looks like in the corner one, I'll just use as an example, it looks like there's no leverage, right? Like if we spent 1.8 million, no one's going to help us and all our money's going to be gone. Whereas if we spend 20,000 on the sub area study, that 20,000 will actually turn into 80,000 if we get the Henderson match, which to me just seems a lot more efficient and responsible for us.
Another comment I would just make is if there's any relationship to budget, and what I'm thinking just as an example is the online permitting program dollars, that is very likely something that we're gonna be pushing pretty hard to get funded one way or another. And that, so potentially funding it through ARPA dollars could be budget relieving. Because this is a needed product. The planning and building services team needs to upgrade their software. It has to happen. It's old, it's decrepit. We can't advance to online payments using this system. And it's almost a 20-year-old system right now, so we need it. So one way or another, it's gonna have to be funded. So that $200,000 may be budget relieving.
I think your point, Amy, is that if there's something, so what you're suggesting is that things that we know we got to do anyway, like if we know we really have to be spending the money anyway to bring the proper service and bring us into the 21st century on permitting, then this is a good opportunity to fund it. And unless we know of another source of, and I'm in quotes, free money, I mean, money from outside our normal budget, then this could be a good source. I think that's a legitimate, I had not put a star next to that one, but I think you made a good point. I will let you know what I had just sort of starred. I had 3 stars and 1 question mark that popped out to me. One is the behavioral health line on the back page. One of them was the Dumont Lawson Downieville sub-area plan, which seems less, which in some ways seems like it should be a lower priority than some of the other things I see on this list. On the other hand, it's already gotten in the way of some important discussions we've had about everything from housing to childcare to other stuff. And if we have decided, if we've drawn that, because we stuck that flagpole out there a while back, that we can't really do anything major with this area until we do a sub-area plan. I mean, our ability to develop the county, both in terms of good services for our citizens or in terms of economic development, is contingent upon getting that done because we stated it. And it's not a huge ticket item. So that's something I thought I would, 21,250 in order to achieve a grant that only has a 25% match against the grant seems like a pretty reasonable thing to do without much pain out of the ARPA fund. I think we all feel strongly about behavioral health, knowing that we're able to accomplish that. And I believe that it appears to me, I'm having a hard time reading this, that it also has a grant leverage opportunity. Am I correct? Second line on the back page. Mm-hmm. There's a grant opportunity leverage associated with that. Flipping back to the front page, I'll work backwards just for people who think like I do. The health and wellness center tenant improvements is a big ticket item, but we also know that the sustainability of that entire project relies upon its ultimately being full. And if that also has grant leverage opportunity to it. I know that's a big ticket item and it's a bigger swallow for me too, as I think about it. These are just ones that are popping out to me. And then finally, down on the broadband conduit install in road projects on the bottom. My understanding is that that also has grant leverage opportunity at 50%. But I don't know that we have a specific 300,000 or whatever dollar project that we have in mind for that. It's just setting aside funds to be able to do that every time we do a road project.
Yeah, we need to figure out how to hopefully set something like that aside in our capital budget moving forward.
Right.
That said, you gave us the authority to do the Soda Creek project and we didn't do it because it came back way too expensive. What was it?
The, we got the fiber and the conduit for 98,000, but the excavation and trenching was 275.
That's what we were talking about last time. The plastic is actually pretty cheap.
Right.
The fiber, and you can even put the plastic in without the fiber for future. If you don't have something to hook to it yet anyway, there's no point in putting the fiber in. All you need is and you don't even have to put the string in it. You can blow the string through later, but just putting the plastic in the ground is nothing, but it's especially helpful if you already had a trench in mind for some other purpose that you can drop that plastic into. And in that case, I'm presuming therefore there wasn't a trench included, so we had extra trenching to get it done.
Correct.
Okay.
So that project may just not have been a good match for this policy, right? Dig once would imply you're doing projects where you're digging already.
We were a little late to the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of that same kind of stuff happened with the westbound PPSL too, where we realized we could have gotten some help potentially from Cdot to allow us some access and just to get our own plastic into their stuff, but conversation was too late.
We have a comment in the chat. Sean, I didn't know if you wanted to read that out loud or.
Oh, I was looking at the spreadsheet and I wasn't looking at the chat.
Comment.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
We don't have agreement on that, by the way.
Yeah, it was essentially a comment about a financial view, and it's from Michael Tenzi, who's on the planning commission, I believe. Not sure if this is the appropriate forum, but delaying the spending will reduce the real value. With 6% inflation, the net present value of 2026 spending will be 20% lower. I guess my comment were, who knows whether the future is going to be 6% inflation or not. But that's a comment that was thrown out there.
Yeah.
One other quick, and Amy kind of made me think about looking at this through another lens. I'm not looking to give staff a homework assignment, but at some level, staff knows more about the county operations than I do for sure. I mean, I'll let George and Randy speak for themselves. So at some point, I think that's another lens that I would like to know, which is how does staff view these? How does staff rank these in terms of importance, in terms of how to provide a better overall service for the county residents? And I know that Amy kind of anecdotally threw one specific one out there, but that's something that I would love to hear about in some forum. And then the other comment that I have is I don't conflate effective behavioral health with navigator, right? I know that's an idea that people threw out there. When I think about our county and its demographics and its geography, I think it's possible that we would try that and it wouldn't really move the needle much and we would spend a lot of money. So I completely agree with the importance of getting smarter about behavioral health. And I had a good conversation with the gentleman who runs a hospital system when I was out in Washington, DC a few weeks ago. And he had some pretty interesting comments about what he feels like the root causes are, which this isn't the format for. But when I think about that, I think about Navigator, I don't necessarily connect the dots that it's gonna move the needle.
Yeah,
it's also not one-time money. That's an ongoing program, as far as I understand it.
Yeah, when I brought it up, it's like I don't really know. All I meant was that I think it's worth looking into. It's not something, and I think actually what you brought up about rating, I mean, there could be a couple of small ticket items that are worth going ahead and getting it started, jump starting today. One of them could be something that I mentioned a moment ago, the Dumont the DLD sub-area plan is something that's a small ticket item that's holding up some other big items for us, at least in our decision making, that could be worth throwing, with very little pain, we can throw something at today. Otherwise, though, I think that having on some of these things upon which we're less clear, or we have general agreement that they're important, like behavioral health, and deciding whether this navigator role is the right one, having staff input back on this with a little bit of a ranking could be helpful, because I see that we have $4,479,000.50 in asks and under 1.8, 1.75 million available. So obviously that leaves us about a third of, about 30% or something of that actually really available to us. So having some prioritization, whether for current or future spending, would be important. With regard to the spend it now or lose it to inflation, I think that's a really good comment. That said, and it depends on what kinds of things we're trying to do and what the inflation in those areas are. I'd also like to point out that discounting principles apply the same as inflation. Yeah, it goes up, but there's present value versus future value of money to take into consideration there too. So, and that's, I don't think I have anything else to say.
Okay, so the things that I have starred that would make sense for us to look at now, it's a combination of things that I just know I want us to do. And I think that's a reasonable justification. There are issues that the public is expecting us to work on, and that I want to work on. Another reason that some of these items are showing up as a priority for me right now is because we've identified grants. We haven't identified the deadlines for those grants in this spreadsheet. I worry if we ask staff to go populate those deadlines and bring this back to us, we're just extending the process. And so there's a couple of projects that I would support authorizing today, just so that staff can go and at least authorizing a grant application today, so that staff can go and put that grant together and see if we can be successful. So those for me are the DLD sub-area plan. Don't need to repeat the rationale. I agree with what Randy said. The Housing Authority Startup Fund is something that I would like for us to reserve on this spreadsheet. If it is the only source of startup funding for the Housing Authority, I would be very much in support of that expenditure. There's a chance that lodging tax revenues can fill that gap. And I know that this is me just talking about the future, I imagine. But given that chance, I don't know that I would argue for that funding today.
Can I ask a question for
And we've
clarification?
got the Ihop grant coming too, so we'll have startup money to start funding
And we have the
that study.
Can I ask a question for clarification, just to make sure I'm following you? So when you say reserve that $150,000 on the Housing Authority startup, you're saying not necessarily authorizing it today, but putting a gold star next to it as we look forward and maybe do get some better information on some of this and see
Yeah.
what other, in other words, first confirm that there is no other source that's available to accomplish that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And so,
So that's not a hard ask on that one.
right. Well, it's an ask that there's $150,000 sitting there if it's needed. We'll probably have more clarity on that around January, December. Behavioral health. I am a bit agnostic about whether it should be a navigator or what it should be. The navigation was a recommendation that came out of a collaborative process with Omni after speaking to all the folks that touch mental health in Clear Creek County. And that recommendation came out. So I feel fairly confident in it, but Sean, I'm more than happy to have you put your fingerprints on this. If there's alternative ideas for this investment, happy to have that conversation, but I would like to see us make an investment. So that's on my list.
One thing to throw in there that I think is relevant is a private party funded a position for JCMH related to youth crisis management in the county and Gilpin County as well. and I think it was around $150,000, and nothing's happening. Guess why? Because there's no one to hire.
Correct.
And
Yeah,
there's 100 open recs at JCMH right now. So I think there's another element of the money's only part of it, right? And us carving out the money doesn't necessarily mean anything's going to happen.
Right. Understood.
it's a great point. And so what I'm here to argue for lack of a better term, is that we make that investment, that we commit to that dollar amount. And we get the policy right about how that investment can be leveraged the best to address this behavioral health crisis we're experiencing.
So that is a hard ask, is that correct?
Yes. The fiber loops, the reason that the two fiber loops in Idaho Springs and Georgetown are on this list for me is because the county match is actually really small. There's a real leveraging opportunity here. And what I would like to do is just authorize staff to apply for those grants. And then if the grants, obviously, with the understanding that if they come through, we're spending that $25,000 a piece in ARPA match.
And that's actually 25 grand, not 100 grand?
If the grant comes through, it's 25 grand per project. So we take $200,000 project and spend 50,000 of our own money on it.
So you're not asking for 100, you're asking for the 25% if you get the grant.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I think this sheet could be improved, is I would love to see it jump off the page. What is the amount that's going to be debited from the ARPA account? And I think I would like to reserve the right to make my decision based on the outcome of the grant process, rather than saying, hey, we're going to spend up to 300,000, whether it could be 50 or 300, depending on the grant outcome. To me, that really matters, how much we spend and how leveraged it is.
That's a great point. And so to just kind of continue to clarify, I would be in support of direction today that authorizes up to 25,000 per project, meaning that if the grant is awarded, the project is funded. If the grant's not awarded, it shows back up on this list.
Is it appropriate to make the direction to apply for the grant or have at this time today based on our agenda?
Yeah, it was written with action in mind.
Yeah.
For you to take action on individual items.
So this implies that we're also giving staff direction to do the grant application. Right, okay.
Another one on my list is wildfire mitigation. I can help staff fill out that county match section. I know one of those matches is incentives for local governments that make dedicated investments over a period of years. And Colorado State Forest Service is going to manage that process. It's a pretty well-funded program. So I would like to see that one. I don't know that we need to authorize that one today because it's not tied to a specific plan. I believe that our OEM is putting that plan together. So I'm just putting a place marker down that's one that I will be looking to authorize. And then the employer-based early child care. This one is the county match. The notes don't indicate that there's a grant. Well, they do and they don't. As you read through this.
It's a different grant.
There are a number of grant opportunities associated with this. This is a massive project. We signed a letter saying that we were ready to provide startup capital in the amount that's shown on this list. And so in my mind, it's kind of a foregone conclusion that we would keep that promise.
Well, it was a non-binding comment that we made. It wasn't a promise in my mind.
Yeah. So those are the ones that are on my list.
So, I'm sorry, George, I was circling and highlighting, trying to understand the whole thing because I'm working between two different columns because of what Sean pointed out. There's a little bit of what the real ask is. In some cases, the ask is underneath the column cost estimate. In some cases, the ask is underneath the column county match. So it's a little bit mixed up to follow. The last one you said again was, George, the very last one you mentioned?
Employer-based childcare.
Employer-based childcare, right, which is $100,000 ask. Because there's a grant.
Even that one's a little more nuanced, right? Because it's only going to be the 100,000 if the grant application is successful, right? Like if not, we're dead in the water.
Yeah, correct. Correct.
I'm sorry, though. Go ahead, Randy.
I think it was just agreeing with you. I would be happy to take that one and put it just kind of similar to it was the housing authority funding, and just kind of reserve those funds. Just when we get clarity, I just make sure that we don't spend that money down, so it's there if we want to use it.
Or without revisiting the conversation and, you know, our opinions can change, you know, in other words, you would suggest we not spend that money on any, not necessarily approve spending it now, but not spend it on anything else until we've confirmed the leverage and confirmed that by the time we determine that information, that those are still our highest priorities. Is that a fair statement? So what I have down are, the 100,000 that you put down, George, to understand the 100,000 for employer-based childcare, 25,000 and 50,000 for a total of $100,000 under fiber loops. Again, all of it contingent upon grants. Am I correct?
Where are you seeing, I'm only seeing
County match under the fiber.
Yeah, I only see a total of 50,000.
Well, I'm looking at the two at the top, fiber loop in Idaho Springs, fiber loop in Georgetown.
Me too. They're 25,000 apiece.
There's 25,000 each of those locations and 50,000 below.
Oh, okay. CMO,
bottom line.
broadband conduit install and road projects. I see.
Right.
And I would say that 25,000 is not accurate. I think the match is gonna be 100. I can tell you now, we just did a grant application for the design in Georgetown. And just the design for the loop in Georgetown was 100. So our match is 50 and then it's 50 from DOLA. So when we talk about trenching and excavation, 100 is probably the minimum match that we would have.
What are the opportunities that those towns themselves would also be participating in this?
I think they would.
And so the point is that would be part that when we start talking about matching funds, it could be a team
Yeah.
effort to make a match
We
there.
can try and do that, yep.
So maybe we need to ask staff to flesh those two out a little
I
bit.
think those have to be further explored.
That's a great point, though. How do we responsibly leverage even more by collaborating with the towns in terms, because they're having a full conversation about our money right now.
That's a good point, Sean. There could be other line items.
The municipalities get a share.
Oops.
One other comment I had. One other comment I had is, I mean, when do we start taking things off this list? And the poster child for me is the corner one, just because the number is so large and it's unleveraged, and it would basically end the conversation if we pick that one. So
It's larger than the.
I mean, do we want to keep talking about that one, or should we at some point scale this list down to things that we think are really could happen?
I think that's a larger list than the ARPA list. That's a different list than the ARPA list, since that one line item is larger than all the available funds in ARPA. It's a
So
job
that's my
that's gotta
point.
be
Why
done.
is it on there? Why is it still on there if it's impossible?
I think,
Well, I have it on there because it's not impossible. If it's an option, if the board wants to fund that project, we use this money and we get that project done. That's why it's
I'm not,
there.
okay, well, that's what I'm saying. I'm not going to spend 100% of ARPA money on one item, no matter what that item is.
Which is fair.
But I think also, you know, DOLA, there are players out there who've historically helped us with things like that. And I know that we need to be patient and wait for our turn to come around again after we've gotten a lot of money for the healthcare clinic and other places. But to me, that seems like a much more realistic path to accomplish that.
DOLA has told us they won't fund this project unless it includes somebody else. They're not going to fund a corner in Clear Creek County.
But they would if there were a few other counties who wanted to partner.
If we were building a corner facility for us in Gilpin, for instance, then they would probably they'd look more favorably on a grant application.
Okay,
Sean, I agree with you. I think spending $1.8 million, the whole sum on that project wouldn't make sense. The coroner is in a facility that is reasonably stable, as I understand it.
Yeah, he's pretty happy right now.
And so I think the facility he's in is not the ideal long-term location. But it's not doesn't have the kind of urgency other things on this list have. What I would be happy to see is this show up as a match or as, like if staff or the coroner wants this to continue to be included in the list, we need to start fleshing out other funding sources as well, so that this is just a piece of the project, not the whole thing.
Right. Despite the need, it's not ready for prime time because we haven't flushed out those other opportunities. An example is we might be after the clinic funding that we got out of the federal budget package last year, we decided to kind of stand down and let our other communities around us stand up for that money for this year. And it could be that's in our next cycle, we might be looking at something like this, or there may be some other funds that are out there that we haven't explored.
I mean, again, it's my understanding staff did that already, and that's why it's on this list, because they didn't identify any other funding for the project. That's why it's on.
For this year.
and hey, a real quick time check. We are 5 minutes away from our 10 a.m. Public hearing with the audit. Do we want to, I think this conversation could last for the rest of the day. Are we at a natural kind of stopping point? I know that you've expressed some preferences, and I like the idea of authorizing grant applications because those are non-binding and that allows us to make progress. So do we need to maybe entertain a motion specifically to some grant applications and then move on for now?
Are there any grant applications on here that we don't want to give direction to at this time, or do we want to make the blanket statement that there are several implied grant applications on here? Do we want to just authorize staff to proceed with those as they find the time and see fit?
I'm fine with that because all of them are non-binding, and I don't think we would ever apply for one if we didn't have an intention to want to fund that.
Sean, I'm not sure what you mean by non-binding. If we apply for a grant and we get the grant, the last thing we want to do is say, no, thank you.
Well, he
But we
just said
could.
that. Sean said that in different
But we
words.
could.
Yeah.
You're right, we could, but I would hate to see us apply for a grant we're then going to turn down later.
I agree with Brian and
We shouldn't be applying for a grant if we're going to turn it down.
I still
That's
think
fair.
we should authorize the application, and that's because if we get the application, I'm prepared to spend the money.
And that's
If
the
we
reason
get
for
the
yeah, I'm sorry, George. And that's the reason for my question. Are there any on here that because of their size or anything that we're balking at today that, wow, we don't even know if we can handle a match? If there's anything like that on here that we feel like, then we should hold that grant application in abeyance.
We haven't really talked about the IT security one, and we don't really have time to right now either.
Right, I was going to say that I think the only one grants that you've really discussed is the stuff that's broadband related.
And also the DLD.
DOD, yes,
Bavaria plan.
sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and I'm not sure if we need a motion, but as what I think we have consensus on is authorizing application for the 2 fiber loops, earmarking the
And DLD.
match for DLD. I want to check with you, Sean, on the behavioral health. Are you okay with us asking staff to flesh out that proposal, make sure we understand when this grant deadline is, and have a conversation with you about other things we may do?
Right, set up another
Got
meeting.
back.
Yeah, a month down the road or something.
Yeah, I'm not against, I'm all for helping chip away at our behavioral health problem. Again, my concern is that this might not actually be effective. This particular one.
Yeah, okay. And then the only other, well, you know what, we don't have to even do that. So I would be good with that as the outcome.
Fiber loops and.
Well, there are 3 fiber loop, again, there are 3 fiber infrastructure items on here. There's the bottom one on the first page also, which does also have a grant associated with that. Are we talking about that to to use that grant to create the fund for conduit installation where effective and affordable. Are we interested in that bottom line item on the first page? Being part of that?
I'm interested. It seems a little bit less project specific.
It is.
I agree.
Correct.
I agree. I'm just asking the question to get through this part of the meeting.
Yeah.
Yes or no, basically.
Are you asking me?
I'm asking my commissioners,
Yeah,
yes
right,
or
I think
no.
so.
I see, what I'm looking at is everywhere I see a blue under potential grant opportunities, I'm tagging those and saying, is that a grant opportunity that we wish to authorize at this time or not?
So, and that was where I asked that question, because staff would apply for a grant with a specific project in mind, correct?
Well, that's what I was wondering is can we ask for money just for future possibilities?
Yeah, I didn't do the research on that grant, so I'd have to go back and look at it.
Yeah.
Okay, it needs more, then it's not ready for prime time. Yeah, okay. That's a good enough answer. So it's not on today's list of,
So I'm hearing the 2 fiber loops and DLD. And then we're gonna kind of flush out better and
on a few other items.
give you some better understanding of the matches, et cetera.
Yep.
My preference would be to carve off time on upcoming agendas that are in July and August and keep chipping away at this, because I think it was a productive conversation, but I also think that it's something that's going to take a lot of time.
Yeah, I agree. And if we could find a way to, and whether, I realize it's hard to put them all in the same column, but what I was just doing was highlighting what the actual county expenditure would be, what the ask is out of the ARPA fund. We can have a way to really quickly orient us to that so that to know what the real ask is would be helpful.
Yeah, and then maybe even some element of staff's view of its priority.
Right.
Relative priority.
Okay.
Staff opinion.
One other thing I want to add to that request. I had mentioned this earlier and I'm just seeing it in my notes here. We funded 1 FTE for a grants administrator. Do we want to see extra years for that position show up on this list, be evaluated by staff?
My personal view is I love the idea of somebody out there writing grants and finding money to match the scarce dollars that we have. I don't feel any sense of urgency for that one. And I also understand that dollars are fungible, and I would almost certainly be favorable to spending general fund dollars on a position that's out there raising a lot more money than it's costing us.
It's also something we can revisit.
Okay, yeah, we can revisit that one. Then I'm good.
Okay, does staff have direction, or do we need a motion, or how is that looking right now?
I'm clear on where we're headed. We're just looking at the 2 fiber loops and DLD, and we're gonna come back to you and bring you some more data related to all the grants, et cetera.
Perfect.
Staff feelings on the priorities, et cetera.
Got it. Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Are there any items of the consent agenda that need to be discussed separately or that need to be pulled for today?
Not by me.
Not by me either.
Okay, so I'll just read it. Consent agenda, item number 1, consideration approval of warrant register. Number 2, consideration approval of resolution 22-40, resolution rescinding resolutions 10-112, 10-120, 13-13, 13-77, 19-30, 20-71, and 21-56 pertaining to the use of county credit cards, authorizing the county manager to administratively establish policies and procedures for maintaining and managing purchasing card program, authorizing the county manager or finance director to enter into agreements on behalf of the county to implement, operate, and administer the program. Number 3, consideration of approval of R-22-41, resolution rescinding resolution 16-48 pertaining to a travel and transportation policy, authorizing county manager. And I'm sorry, mine got cut off, so I'll just leave that one at that. Number 4, consideration approval of resolution 22-45, resolution ratifying the Clear Creek County Fire Ban, Stage 1 fire ban restriction for Clear Creek County enacted on June 15th, 2022. Number 5, consideration approval of the Colorado Regional Opioid Intergovernmental Agreement and bylaws. Number 6, consideration approval of cooperative law enforcement agreement with the USDA Forest Service.
And I can I'll read the full number 3 on that. Consideration of approval of R 2241 resolution rescinding resolution 1648 pertaining to a travel and transportation policy, authorizing the county manager to administratively establish policies and procedures for payment and reimbursement of county business expenses. Additionally, that resolution also will set the reimbursement rate for mileage, although it's not reflected there on the agenda.
Okay, thanks, Peter. Do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented in full.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Consent agenda is approved. On to our 10 o'clock agenda item, public budget hearing, consideration approval of resolution 22-32, resolution to amend the 2022 original appropriation for Clear Creek County funds. And I'm sorry, I mentioned the audit. That's our 11 o'clock item, but this item also has your name on it, Maria.
Thank you, commissioners. It's good to be here this morning. This item before you would increase the general fund appropriation in total to account for the ARPA funds. While we received half of the ARPA funds last year in revenue, and we expect to receive the other half here in the next month or so, what hasn't been done by the commissioners is authorization to spend the funds. So we need a formal budget amendment authorizing staff to go ahead and spend funds. Now, we are asking for the full appropriation, the 1.8 million. We realize you have not made decisions on the total sum of the money, but by authorizing the appropriation now, as you continue to have these meetings and start giving direction, we can implement very quickly because the appropriation authority will already be in place. With that, staff recommends approval of this budget amendment or resolution, and I'm happy to take questions.
So in the knowledge that we're not going to spend all of this ARPA money this year, obviously it's not a crime to appropriate money and then not spend it. Would we see next year just a similar appropriation, but reduced by whatever we spent this year for ARPA?
Great question, and that is exactly right. Whatever gets spent this year would come off those ARPA funds, and next year, as part of the budget process, you would reauthorize what's remaining of the ARPA funds.
Only that time it would be included within the budget approval process. And when we approve the budget, we'd be approving that line item.
Correct. We would call the ARPA ones out because we feel like this is such an important thing for the community, and we know that you want transparency around that process, but it would be part of the original budget adoption. You are
Right.
correct, Commissioner.
Right. Thanks. That's the only question I had. So.
Yeah, I don't think I have any questions.
Well, this could be really fast, an opportunity for a break. Did you have something else, George?
No, I was going
Did
to
your voice start to move? Oh, yeah, I was going to, well, then be my guest. I was about to do the same.
Okay. Move we approve resolution 22-32 to amend the 2022 original appropriation for Clear Creek County funds with compliments to our finance director for catching this.
I second the entire motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. And I would also just say thank you, Maria. I noticed in the consent agenda, there appears to be a lot of cleanup and rationalization of existing policies. And my guess is that you have had a central part of that role. So thanks again. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, motion passes. We have 23 minutes. I don't think we have any other executive sessions or anything else to accomplish. So let's just take a quick break and I'll see everyone back at 10:30.
Thursday at 4:30.
Somebody's in the room,
On.
raise their hand.
I know that.
So there wasn't a.
It's easier than doing the trail.
At least.
Oh, okay.
There are a lot of people there.
All right, Sean, I'm getting the
Yeah, well, I'd love to
cast
see you.
started. Hold on.
Nice meeting you, sir.
Steve. That.
Yep.
Just heard.
Bull frogs.
Okay,
Herding bull frogs.
yes,
Steve's on.
okay. And then,
Okay.
Sean, can you hear us?
Yep.
I can hear you. Looks like we're all back, and it's time for our 10:30 session annual update with Project Support Senior Center. And I don't see Donna, but I see
You,
the
Donna,
brewmaster.
here.
I am here. I will
Hey, Donna.
miss this.
Well, perfect. I will hand it over to you then, Donna.
Well, I really don't have much to say over and above what I sent you in my packet. I'm more here for questions and answers. We have the update of everything that we've been doing for probably the last 5 years, mostly in the last 2. And we're asking, because Troy has resigned from our board effective the end of this month, we would like for you to consider Steve Indrahus as your representative on our board. And the third one is that we have found that we should never have painted project support back when the addition was built. Bricks need to breathe, and that's why the very bad pictures in your packet. And in order to do this, we're going to the State Historical Preservation Fund for a grant in the neighborhood of 220 to 250. And we're required to do a 25% grant match, which would put us in the 50 to 60 grand area. We have $25,000 of that. And I would like the board's consideration for a $10,000 contribution toward that grant match. With a letter of commitment right now, I don't need the actual money now, but when we're awarded the grant, I will have to prove my 25% grant match in the bank. So, before I can sign the paperwork with them. So those are the 3 things that I'm here for. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer them. And I see Steve is online there. If you have any questions for him, we really, you can't get a bigger supporter than Steve for project support. He was integral in COVID. He periodically fed all of our residents. And he's a fun partner. He puts their music Thursday night outside the building, and our residents really like it. He's had quite a variety of different music, and they're really liking it. And he's just so community oriented and a good businessman, and we can always use good businessmen on our board. So I'm here.
Okay, yeah, the first thing that I would throw out there is there is a community grant program that happens once a year. And I know that it is funded a variety of things in the county. And I'm talking about Team Evergreen's grant program. And I would think that that would be something that you wouldn't want to miss. And that grant program will happen after the triple, I want to say in the September timeframe.
Okay.
And last year, Team Evergreen awarded a total of $500,000 across the state. So I would definitely make a note of that and be sure to pay attention to that one.
Yes, we will. Our other people that we're going to approach is Henderson, of course, the Loop Railroad, all of the municipalities, La Pomar, or El Pomar, I'm sorry. And anything else that we can come up with to meet that $35,000 to $40,000 extra that we're gonna need over and above what we already have. The $25,000 came last summer when a couple named Slattery came into project support, and they were wandering around, and we gave them a tour, and we told them everything we were doing, and they handed us $100 bill, and we were very grateful for that. And then they said, do you have any capital improvement plans for the building and like that? And we said, well, yeah, we do. And they sat down on the couch, talked amongst themselves, and then wrote us a $25,000 check. And so we immediately deposited that into our preservation fund, and it has not been touched since. It's just waiting for this grant to come through.
Mm-hmm.
Can you remind me, will you repeat the cost of the project, other funding sources, what your ask is of us?
Sure. The cost of the project, as I found out from estimates, is anywhere from $220 to, I think the highest one we got was $241,000, which that is just the brick and the mortar. And it won't allow any room because the maximum grant is $250. It won't allow us to get the balcony done, or, any of the porch balcony area. We have a gentleman that I'm asking him to update his proposal from earlier this year because of increased costs. And his proposal will allow us the room to get the balcony and the posts and everything redone like that. He's also going to replace the first 2 rows all around the building because we've got a lot of brick damage. They're sun-dried brick, so they're very porous. The grant requires that we replace like with like. So they do an analysis of the brick. They have to replace the brick with like brick, and then they do a chemical analysis of the mortar when they go to point it, and it has to be like. And so it has to be the same chemical makeup. Over the Haynes have advised us up to this point. I asked them just a few weeks ago if this was the time when I asked them to be our architect on this, and they said, unfortunately, they aren't taking new clients this year, but they sent me a list of other architects that we can look into. So we have to come up with, and it'll be close, we'll be close to that 240 to 250, because we have to have the person who takes the paint off the building, which is a chemical process. You're not allowed to use sandblasting or anything like that. You have to take it off with a chemical process, highly expensive. And to tuck point or repoint the mortar, either all of it or some of it, is highly expensive. We have to have an architect. We're allowed 10 to 15% for administrative, but you know me, on my other grants, we don't take administrative because we put the money into the project. We're all volunteers there, so we're okay with that. We'll volunteer on that part too. So it'll be close to the 240, and 25% of 240 is like 60.
Do you have a deadline for raising this money with respect to the grant match?
I need my letters of commitment when I submit my grant, and the grant is submitted on October 1st. You can submit prior to that, but I will probably take advantage of their draft review, which I can do during the month of September, and they'll review it, send it back, tell me where I could make it stronger, tell me, things that'll make my grant better. The Haynes have already told us that we stand a really great chance of getting this grant just simply because project support is the only entity in the county that does what it does for the senior citizens of Clear Creek. And because 60% of our population is over 60, there's a great need. Because we house VOA with their transportation and their Meals on Wheels, And that program, we're the only place in the county that can support that program. So they say that putting that in our grant helps us to move a little further. It is a point-based grant, so the stronger you can get to those 10 or 5 or 20 points, you know, the better you are. So who we're going to ask for money also is Henderson Mine, the Loop Railroad, El Pomar, the other municipalities in the county. Oh man, I can think of there's other large businesses in the county.
Gates. Are you asking Gates Family Foundation too?
I don't know if we're allowed to use grant money to make a match. Some grants have an issue with that.
Yeah,
So we'll have to check into that, but if you can, I'm all for it.
yeah.
We have our own gravel pit here in Clear Creek County too.
Oh, and Fry, you know, we can always go to Fry.
Yep.
And because he's always been good with like mayors and commissioners and other things. Yep.
Yep. So my own personal thoughts on this is I mean, it sounds like a very worthy project. I also think it's possible that you'll be able to raise the money without any county dollars. And my preference might be to circle back on this ask in September when it's more clear sort of where you're at. Just because, again, our dollars here are so dear and there are so many needs that we're looking to fund. So we wouldn't want to fund something that someone else was willing to fund.
Sure, I understand that. The other thing is a letter of support. So that doesn't cost anything but a stamp.
Yeah. I'm sure we would be up for that.
Okay, all right. Randy?
Yeah.
I feel similarly. I mean, it's not a gigantic ask, that's for sure. However, everywhere we can, we're looking, if you heard our earlier conversations, we're looking at opportunities to leverage every time we get the checkbook out, you know, because it's just so critical for us at this point in time. As far as a letter of support and as far as actually weighing in and trying to help find those other sources, I think we'd be all over that. And with regard to the first part of the meeting, which is about Steve Enderhoos. If there's a job that Steve Enderhoos wants to do, and it sounds like he wants to do this one, I'm assuming that somebody didn't, you know, tie him to a chair and set him in front of his Zoom camera there. And that he's here voluntarily. And as long as Steve's here voluntarily, if Steve wants a job, give him a job. Give him the job if he asks for it, so.
All right. By also, in asking you now for this, it's just the letter of commitment.
So
You could.
I'm sorry, I do have to interrupt. The only thing on the agenda right now is the annual update for Project Support Senior Center. There's no ask or request for a letter of support or anything like that that's agendized. I would ask that you get with staff and that we bring this back. This really isn't the appropriate time to have that discussion or give direction.
Okay, we may not be able to come to a conclusion here.
Well, no, it's that work session and I know you can't vote on things in work sessions.
I think we can give direction in work sessions.
You can give direction, but again, is this specific to just an annual update with Project Support Senior Center?
Right, okay.
Well, would that pertain also to even simply a letter? This is a question for Peter. Would that also pertain to simply giving staff direction that a letter of support for their, should we also not do that?
Well, ideally, it would have been agendized, but I'm fine if you want to stick to it. I understand it was in the memo. So
as far as a decision about the funds or anything like that, I completely agree with you. I would be very uncomfortable with moving forward without that having been on the agenda as well. In terms of being in support of your getting the work done.
Okay.
That's all
yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, and I appreciate your comments, Peter, because seeing on the agenda an annual update, and it's the first annual update during my 3 years in office from this organization. And then having attached to that the update is that you've got some asks, is just something that, and I'm not trying to beat you guys up, but little bit more transparency, a little bit more advance notice that an ask is going to be delivered to us, that it can be put on the agenda in the right way, and I can have time to think about it, is helpful, just as an admonition for the future.
Sure.
And I know, like, we're all busy. I do last minute stuff all the time, so I'm not trying to beat you up. As far as the letter, I'm in support of us getting a letter of support written. I don't know that we have the kind of urgency that we need to issue direction now, except that I think the sooner you have a letter, the sooner you can show that to everybody else that you're asking for funding from, right?
Right.
So I'm in support of us getting a letter written and signed.
Yeah. And if Peter's okay with the
Yeah,
staff
that's-
direction today for that purpose,
Right, that's fine.
That's what I was suggesting.
And then on the actual funding request, I agree with Sean here, and I want to put a little bit of a finer point, just so that when Sean says our dollars are dear, he's absolutely right. And it's more than a value statement of wanting to be careful with money. It's a reflection of a really, really horrible fiscal reality for Clear Creek County. Everybody in our community has seen their tax bills, and everybody says, well, our housing values have gone up a lot. And so you should have a lot more revenue, right? And we did get a lot more revenue from those housing values go up. And the really shocking thing about that is that in spite of all of our taxes going up, our total revenues continue to decline because we're losing revenue so fast from the Henderson mine. And so I just want to like take a minute to explain that it's more than a value statement. A decision to spend $10,000 is a decision to not have $10,000 for a critical service at some point in the future. And that's how we have to weigh these things in this context. So I'm not saying that I would not ever support an ask like this, but I would do so dearly and would want to see that we're, a small partner in a much bigger project. So just sorry, I realize that's a little bit of a long-winded statement. Just wanted to kind of help everybody watching and listening, and you all just understand what we're trying to deal with here.
Sure.
Good.
And then lastly, with regards to Steve and Steve's desire to be our representative on the board, Steve, really, really grateful for you stepping up to do this. I do think that we need to have a process for our board appointments that's consistent for every board and every appointment. That process, in my mind, involves an interview. And so I would like to ask staff to get an interview scheduled so that we can interview Steve.
Right.
I'll be in the interim between now and then, be thinking and would love to hear offline or hear what the thoughts of project support are about what we need our representative to represent. Like, what are the unique county interests in project support? Because that member of that board will be there to represent us. And so that's just kind of what I'll be trying to think about as I prep my questions for that interview.
Okay.
And I think that's the only other thing, like once we have consensus on these asks and these topics that were brought up, is I would just love to hear how things are going. Have the public be introduced to the new director, that kind of thing.
Well, we have a new director for project support, and her name is Tamara Orndorff. She comes to us from Benefits in Action. She had been to project support with some events. We did, 2 or 3 events in the fall and early this year. And when we found ourselves in need of a director, we kind of went, Tamara, let's call her and ask her if she would like a job. And I think that the job has proven to be challenging for her. I think that she has proven that she's up to the challenge, that she's a ball of fire, let me tell you. I learned quickly to not say words like, I wish we had, because all of a sudden it appears. It's like she puts things out in the universe and there they are. She has made more connections with senior communities, senior programs, than we've probably made in the last couple of years. And that's without COVID. I mean, because we didn't have what we needed even prior to COVID to be a senior center where all the seniors can come. And then when the Yellow House in Evergreen closed, it made it even more prevalent that we needed to have senior programs because the southeast end of the county doesn't have anywhere to go. So she's been working, and a lot of the people who went to the Yellow House were also part of the Foothills Housing Authority. There's 2 facilities over there by Elk Run. That nobody has anywhere to go over there. So she goes over and picks them up once a month for an day, a resources day. She's brought in Dr. Martinez, who's a mobile dentist. He'll come in and treat any senior over 60 for free, or Medicare or Medicaid, whatever they have. Doesn't turn down anybody. They also bring a benefits in action person to help people fill out the forms. The thing with the Health and Wellness Center is that Tammy and Mary cannot help the clients fill out the form, and they're very difficult forms. And so what the benefits in action person can do is help them fill out that form so that it's done right the very first time and there's no delays. What Tammy and Mary can do is tell you that your form isn't filled out properly or you're missing information, but they can't tell you what. That's the rules. So this person can help with that. We have a monthly, first Thursday of every month, Mayor Chuck from Idaho Springs comes for a coffee time with our residents and evidently other residents. Tomorrow puts it out there on Facebook and the populace comes and they have coffee and they talk, and you're more than welcome to come and join that conversation or just come anytime. VOA has an excellent cook. And so all his meals at 11:30 are really great. His lasagna is particularly good. You're welcome to come to that. Not that some of you are over 60 yet. None of you
Not all of
are
us.
over 60 yet. So we've developed a much better partnership. We've always had a great partnership with VOA, but if you can imagine that through Tamara and Cindy, we've developed a better partnership and getting more things done and the people out. They go on visits to Hobby Lobby. That seems to be a really popular one.
I love that place.
They do too. And so we've just done a really, and we've got we would love for you to come see the inside of our building because we have freshened and brightened and replaced that ugly carpet with plank flooring, and we've painted everything. We now have an art gallery in the hallway that goes out to the Underhill patio with a little quiet sitting area for the residents. And so our next one is to finish up that conference room, which I got permission to do yesterday. So we will be finishing that up and the whole first floor will be brand new and fresh. Then we'll work on the second floor. But we are fully occupied. We have 14 residents, all of which seem relatively happy right now. If we had Wi-Fi and telephone, we'd be really happy, but that's been an issue since Thursday. We're working on getting it fixed. But it went down and it's not coming back up.
Can I add to that, Dawn?
Sure.
So in addition, if you all know about senior resource centers, period, in the United States, they are declining. In turn, they really should be improving. We offer services to all older adults, and this is good for their mental well-being, their behavioral well-being, and of course, eliminating isolation issues as well. So, making sure that they're getting proper nutrition, that they're considering a better exercise or physical activity, helping people with fall prevention is extremely important. And helping the community. This is really important. I'm going to give you a quick example of a gentleman in another county, I'm not going to say where, but locally, who bought a chair for a woman the other day. It was a $25 chair. He said, I just want to give this to you as a gift. I'll put it in your car. Well, she got home, this is up in the woods, and she couldn't get this into her house. She struggled, she got hurt doing so. And when I got over and I found out, I thought, why did this person not ask to, how this was gonna get in the house? When we are looking at a community, supporting a community and neighbors helping neighbors, we need to educate each other on the importance of understanding the physical limitations that we start to experience as we get older. We need to start addressing the isolation issues and other types of support that we can provide them. So the Senior Resource Center, the Senior Center for Idaho Springs and Clear Creek County is extremely important. And I think that I invite you all to come look and learn and see what we're doing, because I can't even top what all I've been doing. It's too much it would take up your time, and I think Peter would probably get mad at me. But thank you. Appreciate your comments.
Yeah. And as far as your finances in the county, we experienced it with the thrift shop because we had to close for nearly a year with the first year of COVID. And that cost us dearly because we cannot support that place on rents only because we are low income rents. And we rent anything from $325 to $680. And we only have a few that are at the top of the list. It's a income-based rent scale. And so, yeah, the thrift shop is extremely important to us. And it's getting better. We are at least matching last year's numbers. When we could open for Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, we're at least matching those numbers. We need volunteers. We're trying to open Tuesday through Saturday. I think I can do Wednesday starting in July. But hopefully we can meet the goal we set for ourselves this year, which we did 42,000 last year. We want to do 60 this year so that we can do some more things and be more self-sufficient. But so far, so good.
Well, thanks, Donna, and welcome, Tamara. It's wonderful having you here in our community and helping out with this important project. I wanted to just say one follow-on comment to George's. With respect to board nominations, we're a small county, so we're not looking to be bureaucratic, but we want to be very consistent and transparent and fair in terms of how we seat our different boards. And I know, Steve, you personally, and I really appreciate your interest, and I don't imagine this process is going to go any other way than us welcoming you. But like I said, we're just looking to be consistent and kind of be an example of good government. But with that said, I would love to see you on our calendar sometime really soon where we can formalize this.
And I think that my comments a little bit ago are, first of all, Steve and I are good friends. I'm very supportive of him, and I think he's good at what he does, everything he does. And all of that said, we do have to have a transparent process, and give the opportunity to let people know the opportunities out there. And part of that's we had gotten really loose with a lot of our appointments, and over the last 2 to 3 years, we've gotten a lot tighter with that. So gotta, stick to the same deal. With regard to fall prevention, I'm glad you brought that up. I personally, whenever I get out of the emergency room, I always get contacted by Medicare, and they want to make sure that my doctor talked to me about fall prevention. Yes. And he's suggested that if I am going to go mountain biking at night, I should wear a headlamp. And so I got one.
Probably ought to do it during the day. Yeah. So would you like me to?
I was gonna say, do you want me to take a stab at the letter, or do you want to send me some talking points and I'll write the letter of support?
No, I can send you talking points till I'm blue here.
Okay, that would be awesome to help me.
I will do that. And the ask just needs to be later on the agenda as a consent item or a work session.
I think
Action item.
it would be
Action.
an action item or a work session.
Okay. Well, didn't we just do the work session?
Yeah, I mean, whether it's, if we want to schedule that for action when you are ready to come back, I'm always happy to have a schedule for action.
Okay.
Don't know that the next conversation will result in action as far as like I'm concerned about.
Well, no, but, and my point in coming this early was because having worked for the county before, I know when budget time is. And your actual budget time is after I have to submit the grant request, but I don't have to have that money until January. They don't announce if you've been awarded the grant until December, and they don't have you sign until January. And therefore, it could kind of be in next year's budget.
Yep. Okay, we're at the top of the hour. So again, I appreciate you guys coming in. Thanks, Steve, for your interest. And then I would say my personal preference would be to delay the ask until you guys have the opportunity to beat the bushes and
Sure.
make a bona fide effort to go find the money in the community before asking us. With that said, thanks again. Welcome, Tamara. We'll move on to our next agenda item, which is the presentation of the 2021 Clear Creek County Audit. And Maria, it's back to you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks, Donna.
Give us just a second while we set Maria up.
Maria, do you need me to plug in?
I think we're gonna try it this way. Let's
Okay, it should be live.
Yep, it is.
Okay,
So
thank
they don't
you.
have the powers yet.
It's good to be back again, commissioners. Again, good morning. We are very pleased to bring to you the county's 2021 financial audit report. The county undergoes a financial audit every single year. As required by state statute, you have hired Hinkle and Company as your independent CPA firm to conduct the audit. We have Timothy Helto with us today. Did I say that right?
Ihop Helto.
Ihop Helto. I have to get used to saying that. He is a licensed CPA here in the state of Colorado. He has over 2 decades of experience in the industry. He served as the engagement partner overseeing the county's audit. He has also served on this audit for the past few years, so you may or may not have met him before. He has here a letter that I will pass around. This is communication to governance, and he will talk about that. It's required communication by the auditors. And he also has a presentation, so I will turn that over to you as well, but I need to make sure, are we seeing this appropriately on the Zoom?
Yep.
Seeing it? Okay,
Yes.
you're up.
Okay. As Maria mentioned, my name is Timothy Ihop Helto, and I am the engagement partner for Hinkle and Company. And this is our 4th audit as Hinkle and Company, I believe. So with that, if we can get the next slide. Today's agenda is we're going to talk about the audit process and results. We're going to talk about the required communication letter that's being passed around. And for the year-end 2021, there were changes to the format and geography of the auditor's report. Then we are going to talk about some issues identified and improvements going forward, and then we'll wrap up with some Q&A. So next slide. Our audit process and results are basically composed of 3 items. The first thing is planning, then we go into testing, and then we do reporting. Just a quick overview of the planning process. What we do is we obtain an understanding or update our understanding of the county's operations. This includes changes to operations and programs that occur throughout the year. You have changes in personnel, commissioners come on, commissioners come off. You may have, I know with the county, there's been some accounting and finance as well as management changes. So there's some changes in personnel, changes in perspectives. Different commissioners and different management have different perspectives and things they like to concentrate on, or they have hot button issues that they want to address. And that also all impacts our audit approach. We also update our understanding of the county's internal controls. This involves entity level controls, which encompass your control environment, things like tone at the top, risk assessments, which involve identifying financial reporting compliance objectives, as well as identifying any risk related to achieving those objectives. We also have information and communication. You're basically a bit like a ship without a rudder and sails if you don't have the right information and communication coming through. And that you also have control features. We look at the control features that the county has implemented throughout the year, or if they've implemented some new controls during the year that we've audited. We test those. We usually, based on the control features that we have identified, we test some control features. Those are usually encompass disbursements and payroll. And then the final part of internal controls monitoring, it's basically management and those charged with governance, the commissioners, seeing how controls work. A bit of our testing fieldwork overview. We have 2 types of tests. One is substantive tests of details. The other is analytics. Substantive tests of details involve getting evidence related to balances, evidence related to activity. And when you have a single audit, there are also compliance tests for any major programs that have been selected for testing in the single audit. The analytics side is basically a comparison of actual results with expected ranges of results or an expected range. And one of the advantages about analytics is it is something that management and the Board of Commissioners can use to detect misstatements or errors, or even in the worst case scenario, types of misappropriation frauds or financial reporting frauds. So analytics can translate out of the auditing sphere and the testing sphere into your daily, weekly, monthly information. And we have a reporting. We basically issue Opinions, we issue an opinion on financial statements, and we're happy to report that the opinion on the financial statements is unmodified. That's basically a clean report. And then we issue an opinion on compliance with major programs at the county. We basically had no instances of non-compliance. The county was in compliance with the major program we tested, which was the coronavirus relief funds. Our required audit communication, it covers half a dozen things we like to talk about. Auditor responsibility, compliance with ethics, corrected and uncorrected misstatements, any disagreements, difficulties encountered during the audit, consultations with other independent accountants. So on the next slide, we'll talk about auditor responsibility. That's basically, if we can go to the next slide, our responsibility is to obtain reasonable as opposed to absolute assurance that the financial statements are free of material misstatement. And then we also have obtain reasonable assurance that major programs are free of material non-compliance. In compliance with ethics, we have complied with all the independence requirements required of auditors, both from the engagement team standpoint as well as the firm as a whole. And then corrected and uncorrected misstatements, we're happy to report we had no uncorrected adjustments and no corrected adjustments. Basically, the difference between the two is an uncorrected adjustment would be somewhere between something material enough to post an adjustment versus a trivial amount. A corrected adjustment is up on the top end. A trivial amount for correction is on the bottom end. And they're happy to report there are no disagreements with management, as well as no difficulties encountered during the audit. We'll get to this later. And consultations with other independent accountants. This is basically if we had a disagreement with management regarding an accounting issue or compliance issue, accounting would basically get a second opinion with regards to an issue. We usually like to avoid that kind of consultation by providing management and especially the finance director with our reasoning behind, and then we have back and forth and we discuss, are we understanding what's going on with a particular issue? Okay. And we're not aware of any of these types of consultations. Then changes to the auditor's report. First thing you'll notice on the reports in the ACFR for both the financial reporting and the single audit is the opinions, and the basis for those opinions have moved to the front of the report. It's basically the first two paragraphs deal with the opinions. The next one deals with the basis for the opinion. Following that are management and auditor responsibilities. Basically, management has responsibility for presenting the financial statements. We have a responsibility to present, to give reasonable assurance. And then after responsibilities discussion, there are usually some discussion of non-financial statement related information. And that I think that includes, if I remember correctly, talk about required supplementary information, other supplementary information, which is all the stuff after the financial statements and before the statistical schedules. RSI is between our reports and the financial statements. And then with regards to the single audit opinion, there is some discussion about internal control over compliance. And issues identified and improvements going forward. We're happy to report your current year audit is completed in time for your GFOA submission at the end of June. June definitely beats November. Improvements, we noticed that you experienced a finance director. Maria's got a lot of experience with Thornton and having a consulting business and helping out Brighton, both as a consultant and a finance director. That really does add stability. The more stability you have with regards to your finance personnel, the more of a knowledge base they have with regards to your issues, particular to the county. I know when we did the 2018 audit, I think the prior finance director had retired. The next gal didn't work out. And then you were on the third one, but by the time we got to field work and the presentation where we are right now. So added stability, areas of improvement. We've got, Marie and I have talked about this. There's been some implementation of detective controls related to sales tax, reconciling to Colorado Department of Revenue, reconciling to what the county clerk reports for sales tax on motor vehicle registrations, things like that. Improvements to the budgeting process so that you have you're compliant with the state requirements about appropriating the correct amount of funds for expenditures. And then another issue we've come across in some of our other municipalities and charter schools and school districts is basically the Colorado budget law is such that when you expect money coming in, you need to appropriate funds before you start writing checks. That's our basic understanding. So, for example, you'll have COVID money coming in throughout the year. And when you have a pretty reasonable idea of how much is coming in, then you go out and submit your appropriation, approve the appropriation, then you can start writing checks. Sometimes that gets a little topsy-turvy, but usually 95% of the time it should be appropriate then expend. We've also noted you've got COVID-related programs. A nice thing I saw in the single audit with regards to coronavirus relief funds was there was at least one agreement that articulated why a particular cost or program was allowed and related to COVID. Another thing that's coming is you may have spent a little bit of this money at the end of 2021, but there is state and local fiscal recovery funds. That is basically I like to call it the slur for ARPA money. And that's basically, you've got 4 types of expenditures, one of which is lost revenue, which is a bit of a complex calculation. And the Department of Treasury has given a lot of municipalities an opt-out in that they can have an election of up to $10 million on their lost revenue. Okay, so that is the last slide. So if you have any questions, I will try to answer them to the best of my ability.
I have one small question, and are just one little catch in it, and I don't mean this to imply that I've read every single word of the audit report, although I did scan through, but one of the first things I ran into on page 2 on the table of contents at the top, and it's apparent this is probably a template or boilerplate that you use, that is created. We have on the second line, page 10, it says city officials, and I think that meant to say county officials.
You are correct. I am sorry, sir.
But that doesn't, I just want you to know that having noticed something in about the 5th and 6th words or 6th and 7th words does not imply that I've done that same level of diligence throughout the document, so.
That's why you want to go looking for mistakes on the last page.
I know, because I knew that George would be sitting over there going, yeah, that's as far as you read.
You can flip through the.
I should have said that I read.
Through the way or
give you
two
cover.
halfway.
I have to tell you, sir, that I did catch that, and the version that he has, it's corrected. So I must have. I printed a copy that had the wrong thing in it. Good catch, though, because we don't want to post that.
I meant to say, you probably already caught this, comma, and
Yeah.
go on from there.
But I clearly didn't catch it in your packet. Thank you.
I was a little curious about the letter lists major initiatives. I believe this is the letter from you and Brian. The last of those major initiatives is that we secured grant funding for $425,000 for an additional air quality monitoring program along I-70. Maybe I'm just misremembering. I believe that's a grant that we authorized an application for and have not heard back on.
I thought I had heard
I don't know if we got
from
it.
Dr. Ryan that we did get it.
I don't know the answer
Okay.
to that. We'll check.
Okay.
And then if that happened this year, then we wouldn't have it in the letter, right? Because it would need to have happened last year.
We would say we applied for it. Correct, yes.
Other than that, really happy that we met our deadlines. It's a wonderful relief from previous years.
Can have a good summer.
Time to start raising the bar.
Yeah, I would just echo George's comments. It is nice to be fulfilling our fiduciary duties in full. And it feels good. So thank you, Maria, for your leadership, and Brian and Peter for whatever role you played in this as well. Is there anything else that we need to address today?
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having
Appears
us.
to be an act. Yeah, thanks again. Is there anything board that we need to cover before we close down our meeting today?
I think so.
All right, well, that said, thank you, everyone.
Yeah, sorry, I just have a quick question. Obviously, we don't need to act to accept this or anything like that.
No.
No, we like to present it to the board and have you be the first ones to look at it, to kind of close the loop on the year. And then we'll start sending it out to the agencies that we're required to file the report with. We like the board to see it first.
Okay, is there an acceptance or that we should do at a future meeting or anything like that?
No, nothing. There's no action required by the board. It's just that we have an obligation to present this to the board. And then we take whatever statutory obligations we have to fulfill.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
administrative.
Yeah, it actually seems like it would almost be oxymoronic for us to be accepting something that's a critique of our operation.
All right. Thanks again for.
I view it as-
Thank you both. Thank you, Maria.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I view it as a validation of our operation rather than a critique. But that said, I think we're done for the day. So thanks, everybody, for your participation, and we stand adjourned.
Thanks. Thank you.